Thank you. I'm glad you remembered that. So why don't we go and get started? We've got a little bit of ground to cover in only an hour, so we need to keep it moving. I'm Steve Magoon. I'm Community Development and Planning Director and Assistant City Manager for the town. And having some conversations with Councilor Nicole Gardner, thought it might make sense to, encourage some people to participate in town boards and commissions, to have a session to maybe demystify a bit of how that process works and talk a little bit about what it is like to serve on a board or committee. So hence we're having this session tonight. We scheduled it kind of the last minute. So one of the things we thought is maybe might make sense to, maybe even do this annually and
planning.
Maybe give a little more time for people to know about it. Counselor, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, I'm just really excited to have you all here. And I want to thank Steve and our city employees for pulling this together on pretty quick notice. We have a lot of positions that are open. They're very important. It's a way to really contribute to the life of our community and the well-being of our community. So thank you all for your interest, and over to you, Steve.
Thank you. So we have several board and committee members that will talk to you in a minute. What I was going to do is start by going over a couple items real quickly. Let me see if I can share my screen and here we go. Whoops. You guys don't see that yet, do you?
No.
Not yet.
No.
Why isn't it going? There we go.
Yeah, something's coming in.
Yes. So serving on city boards, commissions, and committees. And obviously today is Thursday. So I was just going to go over real quickly a couple of items. The appointment process. If you are interested in serving on a board or committee, is to submit a cover letter and resume to the city manager's office. They will then schedule an interview. Now, I will say that the stuff I'm talking about really is how it's happened in the past, in the recent past with the current city manager. Those things may change in the future, but this is how it has gone. And, one of the things is I didn't put a schedule on here because typically the manager would kind of group them together based on having a group for one board or commission and then dealing with those all at one time. We have a short interview with the manager and myself. Then the manager would forward the members that they selected to the city council for confirmation. The city council, and that's not other than the interview with the manager, that's not something you need to participate in if you were selected. The council subcommittee then would interview the candidate, and obviously you need to be involved in that to be interviewed. Then they would typically make a recommendation back to the full city council for confirmation. Then you are confirmed and be sworn in and become a member of the committee. What kinds of things are we looking for in committee members? I think it does vary a little bit by committee. Some committees have formal requirements in terms of either state law or the town charter in terms of particular skills or things. But I would say in a general sense, when it applies to all the committees, we're really looking for somebody who has some skills or some interests that are related specifically to the topic of that committee. So, for example, for something like the Zoning Board of Appeals, typically they are planners or engineers or architects or attorneys, land use attorneys, people who have some experience with those types of items. Also, you need to be able to commit the time to be an effective member. It's not going to do anybody any good if you volunteer and then can't come to meetings or be prepared for the meetings. And obviously an interest in serving the community. That's probably the most important one. So just real quickly, some of the boards and committees that do have open vacancies. Pretty much all the committees have positions that come up for reappointment, but I was just listing some of the ones that had actual vacancies as opposed to ones that had people coming up for reappointment. So you can see, Board of Health, Zoning Board of Appeals had 2 plus an alternate member, Conservation Commission, Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, Traffic Commission, Council on Aging, Water Advisory Committee, Cable Access, Historic Commission, Commission on Disabilities, and Historic District Commission. Pretty broad range of committees and commissions that deal with a whole wide range of issues for the town. And those are all ones that have vacancies, and we're interested in having somebody come in and volunteer and serve. So with that, what I thought I would do is start with the 3 panelists that we had. Whoops. I'm not sure why I got back to that, but okay. So first up, maybe we could start with Amy Plebnic. She's a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, and maybe Amy and then the other panelists could talk a little bit about the appointment process and how you came to be a member of a board or commission.
Hey, sure. Thanks, Steve. So yeah, my name is Amy Plebnic. I'm on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. So I moved to Watertown about a little over 3 years ago and got involved in the Bike Ped Committee about a year after that. So hoping I can kind of provide the perspective of someone who is a little bit newer to town when they got involved. And I was really interested in just finding ways to get more involved with the town and what was going on. And this committee in particular really aligned well with my interests and the area that I work in. I'm very interested in transportation. I walk and bike and take transit, and I've kind of followed bicycle infrastructure projects around the Boston area for a number of years. And participated in different sort of community engagement efforts. And I also work in transportation planning, mostly on sort of policy and research at the national level. So I was really excited about the opportunity to apply these skills and experience to, helping the place where I live and helping Watertown, kind of advance issues around walking and biking and making, the streets safer for people who live here. So when I was interested in getting involved, I attended a couple meetings, committee meetings and related, I think 1 or 2 public meetings that were related to transportation issues in Watertown. And then, when there was an opening, I decided to apply and went through the process that Steve outlined and was selected. And yeah, overall, it's been a really great experience. Do you want me to talk now a little bit about what the committee does and some of that, or should we save that for later on?
We can do that next.
Okay.
So I'll just continue on. Janet Buck, who's a member not only of the planning board, but invited her more today in terms of the Stormwater Advisory Committee. We wanted to highlight some of the committees that had vacancies. So Janet?
Okay, hi. Actually, we do have a vacancy. Okay. My background is in architecture. I was an architect for many years, and also had a very strong interest in environmental issues and became LEED accredited architect. So I'd say I sort of jumped in at the end of my career more than the beginning of it, like Amy. And I was asked to come to some of the meetings of the Stormwater Committee when they were in the process of coming up with some plans for regulations. And I had a good background in public bidding, so I knew a lot about how to bring that information to the table. It turned out really to be very interesting work, and I I kind of defaulted into becoming the chair of the committee when our chair had to move on. David Stokes, who's here, was elected to the school committee, and so he had to vacate his seat. But it's really interesting because my kids went to school here, and so I was familiar with the school system. And we got involved in doing outreach projects with the middle school, which is very interesting. And then, that was sort of like the gateway. Then I became a member of the planning board, which fascinated me because one of the advantages to being a committee member is when you've been on one side of the table in your career, and you get to turn the tables and sit on the other side and hear your colleagues coming before you and asking for the same kind of things that you used to go before them and ask them for. It's very instructive, and it's good experience for the committee to have. I also this isn't a town committee, but one thing leads to another, and I became a member of the board of the Boys and Girls Club. I ended up being the volunteer coordinator for the library for Hatch. So there is a certain momentum that can get going if you have the time and the interest and the skill set. So I think I'll stop it at that point.
All right, thank you. Leo Martin, Chair of the Conservation Commission.
Wow. Well, I want to thank Steve and Nicole for putting this together. I think it's important for us to spread the word of the value of the boards that you're going to see on that, you saw on Steve's list. They all serve a purpose, and it helps you get involved, for you to get involved with our community. It's for me, this is my 24th year on the Conservation Commission. And so it's open doors for me. I've got involved. I've got to know our town staff and know what they have to do to get what we need done in our town. So it's been, for me, a positive experience for 24 years. And I really have appreciated the fact that the manager picked me to do this work. So how I got to do it was I'm an engineering geologist, and I was working on a large infrastructure project in a wetland, actually doing some damage to that wetland. I mean, it was restored, but we were in the wetland, and I realized that my experiences in that work that I did may benefit our town, our city, excuse me, the city. And so I applied for that job, and the manager accepted me, and it's been a nice ride for me. I've had to work with some fantastic members along the road, two of which, I think at least two of which I hear on this Zoom. Patrick Fairburn, who just announced to us recently that he will be leaving us soon. He was been on, I think, 18 years, and he's a star. He's just a wetland biologist, wetland botanist, and he's just an amazing guy that's helped to guide us along the way. And Maria Rose is on board too. She's an environmental engineer for the city of Newton, and her experience in the Wetlands Protection Act has just been what a benefit we've had by having her on board. But other people that have been board through time have been, another member of our board now is Shelley Bering as a lawyer. And we also have another environmental engineer on board. So we're engineers, scientists that get involved. But in the more recent past, we've had a number of civic leaders who just want to get involved with saving and protecting our wetlands. And so we've had a number of citizen activists that have been involved. Our past chair, Mary Louise McDermott, she wasn't a scientist, she wasn't an engineer, but she got involved with how to protect our town. And I think she was involved for a long, long time, a star member of our team. I could go through 20 years of all these people that have been just a strong board. In my professional life, I went in front of other cities and towns to get my project, the projects I was working on, approved. And I not to downgrade what they were, a lot of them were just smaller towns, smaller cities and towns, and they were citizen activists. But our board has been strong, and it's been strong for a long time. Very talented board. So you should be proud of that. And hopefully maybe one of you will join us because we need new members. As Steve said, one, but with Patrick leaving shortly, we'll need two. So if you're interested, join us. What our goals are to protect let me get this right, 9 ponds, 2 streams, and the Charles River. Protect any development that's in those areas. That's our purview, is within those, around anywhere in and around those streams and wetlands and green space, those are under our protection. We enforce not only our regulations, Watertown's regulations, we also are responsible for making sure that these projects meet the requirements of the state. So we have two roles, in that we review the state for the state review, and then we also review for our own ordinance. So that's in a nutshell what we do. We also have the care and custody of Arsenal Park, which is undergoing redevelopment. The plans go through us, and then, with Steve's and the planning department's assistance, we review those plans for approval before it goes to the town council. So that's sort of a nutshell of what we do at the Conservation Commission, but we certainly would love to have somebody interested in helping us join our team. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. And last but certainly not least, Jean Trubeck, who's a member of the Watertown Energy and Environment Committee. Jean?
So I got involved in the Watertown Energy and Environment, Watertown Environment and Energy Efficiency Committee, We3C. Not long after I moved to Watertown, I moved here in 2016, and I attended meetings of a couple different committees and found that We3C addressed a lot of issues that I was interested in, and also really encourages anyone who is interested, whether part of the committee or not, to contribute. We don't have a limit on who gets to go look up some information. So I found the committee itself very welcoming. The issues that we're addressing, Watertown Electricity Choice was one of the big achievements recently, trying to get a higher percentage of green electricity in Watertown. There have been a lot of projects putting in EV chargers at the senior center and in the library parking lot, getting LEDs. People have participated in school board planning, and we're very happy that there are now to be 3 net zero elementary schools. And whoever is interested is welcome to participate. A lot of our work is done through working groups, and again, anyone is welcome to join a working group, even if they're not a member of the committee. But then, of course, when it comes to taking votes, it's just people in the committee. I'm going to just briefly go over the process, which Steve already outlined, but with an additional comment or two. You send your resume in and your cover letter, and then you wait, and you might wait a long time. This doesn't mean they don't want you. This just means that there's a big pile of work on the desk, and this one isn't the top priority. And you can continue to participate in the committee's work while you're waiting. So I know I had to, and I waited long enough till I asked Ed Lewis, the energy manager, gee, they didn't like me. And he said, just wait, keep waiting. So I think that it would be good if prospective new members knew that there are urgent issues and they're not quite so urgent issues, and new members on committees isn't quite a crisis, although it's important. And then I'd like to also mention, Steve, I think that we have vacancies on our committee. We weren't on your list of people, committees with vacancies.
Yeah, and it's possible that that I missed a couple or more, you know, there may be a vacancy. I didn't think there were, but there may be.
Yeah,
And it was not an all-inclusive list. There may be some other committees.
okay. So I've found that the experience of being on this committee has been amazing because I have never before really known what goes on in the town government. And we become part of it. Our mission is to advise the council on energy and environment issues. So we send information to the council. I spent 32 years living in Newton. I know much more about Watertown than I know about Newton, mainly because of this being on this committee. So, and also you meet people. The other committee members are usually people you really want to know. Some people who apply to be on a committee do it after having lived here a long time. I started going to the meetings after I'd been in Watertown for less than a year and became part of the committee, I think at 2 years. So I didn't really know much about the town before I got on that committee. I also think that it's something you can do it, you can contribute, even if you're working a full-time job and have little children. We need committee membership that represents the town of Watertown. That's the one thing I think we don't have.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate sometimes that the people that feel that they have time on their hands to do it often are retired folks. And, you know, you're right. I think to represent all of the town, it needs to be a broad spectrum of people. And Jean, you kind of started in on the next question I was going to ask all of you. So I'll let you continue on if there's things you want to add, but, you know, to kind of talk a little bit about what it's like to be on the committee and, you know, what kind of time commitment is it? What kind of things surprised you? What kind of things just disappointed you, or, you know, just kind of what you feel it's like to be on a committee?
Okay, I think all the committees meet monthly. But We3C meets monthly. And as I mentioned, a lot of the work is done through working groups. We have an awful lot of working groups considering the current size of the committee. And people volunteer to be in the working group. So you're choosing issues that you really want to work on. The Watertown Electricity Choice did a lot of work, the working group, and it's continuing because we'd like to increase the percentage of people who are getting more green energy. And so outreach, publicity, and so on are continuing. We have a net zero working group. It started out as a gas leaks working group. We wanted to do something about gas leaks, but it sort of got bigger in its scope. And so it's now, when I say net zero, I mean net zero emissions. And a small working group because of COVID, but doing outreach to the schools to try to get programs in the schools that are that address the climate crisis, but also a school buildings working group and people were very active in going to the school building meetings. And I think the 3 net zero elementary schools have a lot to do with the fact that there were We3C members there and speaking. I'm very interested in transportation. I'm on the transportation working group. We played a role in getting the Pleasant Street van. We're now looking at trying to keep the green bus system that we have, because it may go to a slightly brownish shade of green. We're looking at the redevelopment of Arsenal Street. We're looking forward. It's in the future, but to want to keep an eye on what the state is going to do when they have to close the turnpike because of putting it at ground level. And we have an ordinances working group, which has been working on a tree ordinance, and that will come in the future, trying to preserve our canopy. So I guess people volunteer for whichever working group they're interested in. People are welcome to come to meetings. We have a meeting on the 24th. It will be a Zoom meeting, and one thing good about COVID is that we've all gone to Zoom, and we have had much better participation in the meetings than we had. Getting to, is it City Hall now? Getting
Yes,
to
it is.
City
Yes, it
Hall
is.
and then getting up to the very top floor must have been daunting because so many people come to the meetings.
Great, thank you. Janet, maybe you could talk a little about what it's like to be a committee member, time commitments and things you like or surprised by.
Sure. In the cases that, with my experience, it's been pretty inconsistent in terms of time requirements. I think, well, I can say that in terms of the Stormwater Committee, the fact of COVID really put it on a back burner for the first year. It really was kind of the last thing people needed to talk about and think about. So we kind of switched from every month to every other month, and I think we've even skipped 2 months sometimes. But we stay in touch, and we do have meetings at least, I'd say every other month for the most part. And another thing to understand, if you're interested, is that all of these meetings, the agendas are posted in advance. So, and the Zoom connections, if they're going to be Zoom meetings. So if you are thinking about joining our committee, look it up. I think maybe Steve can go back and talk to the ways in which you can find our committees on the website and our agendas. But it's required that at least a week in advance, we post an agenda and a link so that you can join. And you can come and observe and see what is going on. In terms of the planning board, it was actually less of a time commitment than I expected it to be as well. The board meets once a month as long as there are cases. Sometimes the cases are many and take us past 10 o'clock, 3 hours or more. Sometimes there's no cases. And a week in advance, we get a packet of information about what the cases are, and generally like to go look at the sites involved and read all the information. And if we have questions, address them to the planning staff prior to the meeting, because it may not be something that needs public discussion. It may just be some clarification that's needed before the meeting. But again, I was surprised at, it was much less of a commitment than I expected. And it's fascinating to sit there and listen to the presentations, watch what they're doing, and be able to ask questions. I remember in the beginning thinking, well, I'm going to so many of these meetings as an observer, I might as well might as well get involved and have something to say. And I have not regretted that at all. I guess my other activities are not town committee, so I won't address that. I will second what Jean said about the waiting to be on the committee. As a member and as the chair trying to get members approved to add to my committees, it has been frustrating, and I have sometimes had to rattle the cage and say, please, we need another voting member, please. And there's two levels. There's recruiting members, and then there's getting them approved. So we potentially have somebody in the pipeline now for the Stormwater Committee. And we'd be happy to have more people coming, and especially with connections to the schools. That would be fascinating, because we really do. Well, never mind. I'm not going to do a pitch for what we need, but we do need more interest, and it is a very interesting field.
Okay,
So
thank you.
yeah,
No.
that's better. Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
good.
good. Leo, would you like to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a committee member? What surprised you? What kind of time commitments and things like that?
So I think, as Janet and Jeannie said, that most boards meet once a month, as does the Conservation Commission. We occasionally have a special meeting. We have one this month, but usually it's once a month, and it ends up in the summertime. We try not to have a meeting in August, but again, everything depends on how many applicants come to in front of us. There's a state law that requires us to hear an application within 21 days of its filing. So, that's unless it's waived by the applicant. So that's what we have to do. So if something came in and we didn't have a meeting planned, we'd have to plan one meeting, but that's usually not the case. They usually fall once a month. So the applicant will submit a package prepared by our agent. We have our agent, Laurel Schwab, who is in the planning department. She will prepare a package for us and submit that to our members' review. The packages can vary depending on the complexity of the projects and what they have in mind. We have a number of cases going on now that have been continued a number of times to ask for more information or request more information on how they can make their project better comply with our ordinances. So some of them drag on. So again, it depends on the review time of those packages. Could take longer at some time. Our meetings tend to be kind of long, so we can keep it once a month. They generally start at 7, and we've gone to 10, not often, but we have gone that long. But usually we try to keep it, to 9 o'clock, if possible. And so it all depends on the complexity, how many cases we have to hear within that time frame. So there's time for you to review those packages, and there may be a site visit once the applicant comes in front of us. And if we don't want to, we could get a continuance. We may want to do a site visit to see how that development will impact the nearby wetlands, whether it impacts the stream, the river, and how that, whatever the runoff from that stream, the project, how it affects our wetlands. And our goal is to protect those as much as we can within the rules and ordinances that we have. The benefit of us protecting those wetlands is that we have more habitat for wildlife. We have areas where we have more trees. We protect the streams and the ponds with less runoff that gets into them, especially with our new stormwater ordinance that requires developments to control 100% of their stormwater runoff. And that's part of the ordinance that Janet was mentioning. One of the most important ones I think we've had in a while. So we have a number of things. occasionally, we don't have a whole lot of cases. And again, it all depends on structures or work in and around our wetlands. So we may not have a meeting, but we've always found some things to keep ourselves involved with, whether it's the climate resilience project that's going on in town now. We'll have a meeting to discuss other issues going on in the town that we may have an impact to. And we feel, our current commission feels that we can make recommendations and have sent letters in support of various projects that we think are good or bad to our environment. So, but basically it's the meetings and then preparation, and that's about all. Of course, in order to improve our skills, there is a conference once a year run by the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissioners. It's a Saturday, usually at Holy Cross in Worcester, and it's usually a way for our members to take courses to improve their skills. And so that's another commitment that we most of us go along with. So that's our commitments. Did I miss anything, Steve? Or did I talk about it too long?
No, you did fine. Perfect, Leo.
Thank you very much.
Amy, maybe you could talk a little bit about your experience. What surprised you? What kind of commitments it is? What
Sure.
things have disappointed?
Yeah, so I think similar to what other people have shared, in terms of like formal committee meetings, we meet once a month, and that's sort of the only, I guess, requirement, but it's helpful to be able to sort of move different initiatives and efforts forward to meet outside of the formal meeting. So we have kind of subgroups of people who meet outside of the monthly meetings to work on different efforts. And then in terms of, what we do as the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, our role is kind of advising on issues related to walking and biking in Watertown. So one of the things that was keeping us busy the last couple of years was the development of a bicycle and pedestrian plan that the town hired consultants to develop, but the committee was really involved in kind of helping to shape that plan and review the content. And now we're working on, starting to implement the actions in that plan, which is really exciting, and to actually be able to be making some of the improvements that have been identified. We also organize events around walking and biking, which is a fun part of being on the committee. So, every year on Fair on the Square, we typically have like a table, or last year we did sort of a bike parking station and got to just kind of hang out there and talk to people who came, who rode their bikes there. We're currently, some people on the committee are organizing some walks and bike rides around yard art in March. And then there's also a lot of opportunities to kind of get involved in other related groups and efforts in town, similar to what other people have mentioned. So I guess one example of that is I got involved in the Resilient Watertown climate plan through my role in the Bike Ped Committee, and kind of participating in the stakeholder advisory group for that effort. And then I guess another big part of what the committee does, an important role, is on different sort of construction or development projects that are going on in town, bringing the perspective of walking and biking, and kind of advising or providing input on the plans. So for example, on the recent, there was recently a public meeting and call for comments on the Mount Auburn Street reconstruction project, and the committee kind of wrote a letter to MassDOT raising some issues related to bicycle accommodations in that project. So those are a couple things that we work on, but there's really a lot of opportunity for kind of bringing your ideas. If people have something that they really want to work on and are kind of willing to move it forward, and work on it outside of the monthly meetings, that's great, and really good to have that perspective. I think we're a little different than like the planning board, where we have like set hearings that we need to have. I think there's a lot of flexibility and getting to work on things that you're interested in. And then I also just want to echo what others have said about the ability to attend committee meetings, even if you're not officially a member. And for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, we really we have people who come regularly, who have been coming for years as, just not part of, for whatever reason, decided not to apply or be on the committee, but can basically fully participate in all of the discussions and all of this, working groups outside of the monthly meetings that we do, and are really key parts of the committee. So, and it's great to have kind of broader perspectives. So, would encourage people who are interested to start coming, and if it's something that you enjoy, to consider applying. And yeah, I think overall it's been a really good experience. It's been great to get to meet people in Watertown that I wouldn't otherwise have interacted with, most likely, and just also, like others have said, kind of learn more about how the town works, kind of get to know, who the town councilors are and what some of the major issues in town are and things like that. So yeah, it's been a really positive experience for me, and I would encourage others who are interested in whatever committee to apply.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate the comments. One thought that did come to my mind that might be helpful for members of the public is there is one distinction amongst a lot of the boards and commissions and committees, and that is ones that are more regulatory in nature and ones that are more advisory in nature. So you heard Leo and Janet talk about planning board packets and conservation commission packets where there's an applicant that's coming to a board or commission for formal approval of something, and there's staff support for that. And that's a little bit more formal than like the Stormwater Advisory Committee that Janet talked about, or the Bike Ped or WE3C, that are commissions or committees that are more advisory in nature, and maybe not quite as formal a role where somebody's coming to you to ask for approval of something, but more taking a look at something that from your perspective as a committee member is something you're interested in and think is an important issue for the town to address. With that, it is 7:15 and we said we'd go to 7:30. So I did want to provide an opportunity for any members of the public that had any questions to pose those, and any of the members of the panel could respond, or I might try to respond to answer any questions you might have about serving on a board or a commission. And if you do have a question, you can just use the raise your hand function and we'll address any questions anybody has. Yes, Nicole Gardner, go ahead.
Thanks, Steve. I just, while people are preparing to raise their hands with wonderful questions, I thought it might be nice to mention I don't think it was on the slide, the new committee that will be formed, the recycling committee. So just to share that with people, maybe just for a second. Sure. Yeah. So there is another committee that the council just voted to create, which is a solid waste and recycling committee. An important one to deal with some of the issues we're facing now, particularly as our solid waste contract is coming up for renewal. So it will be an important committee to advise the superintendent and the town regarding all issues of recycling and solid waste. Also an important part of our climate and energy plan that we're developing. So that'll be an important committee going forward. And I am stunned that there are no questions. People, our panelists must have done a heck of a job presenting. Melodia, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yep, thank you, Steve. Can
Sure.
I ask how this presentation will be made available to other people that couldn't be here tonight?
Sure. So we recorded it. Thankfully, Nicole reminded me. So it's recorded. We'll put it up on the website. I'll do that tomorrow with the IT staff, and so it'll be available on the website. We'll probably put a link on the front of the web page as well.
Okay, my question is, It's getting a little confusing in town, but looking for meetings because some are recorded by the cable station, some are being recorded by the town.
Yeah.
Could there be some helpful hints on how to find these recordings? Because I feel like I'm in a little puzzle, or what do you call it, a maze. I got to keep my right hand to the wall so I'll be able to get my way out of it.
Yeah. So, when we entered this craziness of pandemic, we got a wonderful partnership from the cable access to record meetings and help us set up, these kind of formats. The cable access, we didn't, use them tonight. So I'm just recording it, and I'll, provide it to IT, and they'll put it on our website, which is a little different because it won't be on cable access TV website. But you bring up a good point, because there's no way for the general public to know when something's being recorded by cable access or the town. I'll take that back to, the town administration and see if we can come up with a solution for that issue.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Steve.
Sure.
And maybe, Steve, I'll just write like a very short blurb to send into Watertown News so we can at least get it out through that channel as well once the link is up.
Sure. Sure. Sounds good. Tom, Flores.
How you doing? Nice to meet everyone. This might be a question more directly for Amy. For the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, is there crossover between working with other groups like the Traffic Commission or other groups to help advocate for, more cross use between pedestrian and, car, roads and areas?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a little bit of that, not so much with the Traffic Commission itself, but with sort of different construction projects that are going on in town. For example, I think there's like a yearly sort of list of which streets are getting repaved each year.
Gotcha.
And members of the committee, we kind of follow that and see, oh, so they're repaving this road. Does it make sense to, advocate for any additional crosswalks here or bike lanes or things like that? So yeah, definitely kind of keeping tabs on different construction projects and also with, large developments that need kind of approval from the town. We have someone from our committee who kind of attends some of those, I believe they're called developers conferences, and kind of advises on, should you put more bike racks here for employees who are coming to work and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunities for getting involved in related projects.
Cool. Thank you.
Other questions? David, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. I'm wondering, is there a typical term? Are most of these 2-year commitments, or is there a mix, or does it matter? Does it vary a lot by committee?
It does vary some by committee, because some of them, when they're established, we create a staggered term so that wouldn't have entire committee potentially turn over at the same time. But generally speaking, they're 3-year terms for most boards and commissions. Some are shorter, some, I don't think there's any longer than 3 years, but that's pretty typical.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Daniel.
That's just a quick question. If you were interested on a committee that was full at the moment, is there a process or recommendation that you have for someone who might want to be on a committee and might see online that, for instance, like a term is expiring soon? How does that process work?
Sure. So, I think one of the unfortunate things is a lot of terms will expire, and people will see that and assume that means there's an opportunity to get on that board or commission. The vast majority of people who are on commissions or boards and enjoy that, they'll ask to be reappointed and will be. So because a term is expiring usually doesn't mean that there's going to be a spot on that board or commission. Having said that, I think if you are interested in a particular board or commission, I would go and not just in, serving on one, but that particular one, and there isn't a vacancy, I'd go ahead and put your name in anyway to the town manager's office. They keep that on file. And so if there was a vacancy available, then we could call you in at that point and have an interview and hopefully get you appointed. Gene. Oh, you're muted.
I want to add to your response to Daniel. Two things. One is if there's a particular committee you're interested in, just start going to the meetings, at least many of them.
Yeah.
That's just fine. And you will be more than welcome, probably given a job right away. And the other thing is, if you look at the town website, it's not always up to date. And so it may say there are no vacancies on a particular committee, but there are. So all the more reason to just start going to the meetings. The meetings are posted on the website. I think they're all Zoom these days. And so the link is given.
I think the one other thing I'll add to what Gene said is that, going to meetings also accomplishes two things. One, it gives you an opportunity to experience what the Board or Commission is about, and may make you even more excited about serving or not. But it also makes you known to the people there and the staff and the other Board or Commission members. If a vacancy opens up, they know you and would want to make sure that you got appointed right away. And the one other thing, with advisory Board or Commission, you come and have an interest, and you can jump right in and probably help out, and they'll give you assignments. Regulatory ones, probably not so much, but you could still, again, make yourself known and show an interest and experience some of what they're doing. Carol. Oh, unmute. There you go.
I think one of the presenters said something about community participants being fully participating in the meetings. I was a library trustee for 4 years. It didn't work that way, and I don't think it works that way. The town council, there's a period for public comment, and it's very brief. But is that indeed the case, that as a just an observer, you can raise your hand and weigh in on issues under discussion?
So I would say again that depends a little bit on the Board or Committee. So again, for something like WE3C, where they are a group of residents who are actively working to research an issue, develop recommendations, advocate for things. Sure, if you're willing to come serve, they will take you in and put you to work. For regulatory boards and commissions, not so much. For them, there really isn't as much of a role for you to actively participate in a regulatory process if you're not a member. You still have an opportunity to participate as a member of the public. Go ahead, Leo.
Just to maybe supplement Steve's comments. Conservation Commission meetings, residents have a choice, an opportunity to speak. At every hearing we have, they have an opportunity to speak, and so they can be heard. Of course, it all depends on our ordinance to whether we can accept any of their comments. Push those comments forward, but we all have an opportunity to speak at any one of our Conservation Commission meetings at every hearing.
Yep.
Thank you. Good question.
Sure. Elodia.
Thank you, Steve. I just want to piggyback a little bit on what you said, Jeannie said, and Leo said, and that is it's a whole lot more than applying to a board. I think people have to go back and read minutes of meetings to understand the issues at hand. I know that everybody says, oh, I can't attend meetings, I'm too busy. Well, you have no idea how much work goes on these various committees. The regulatory committees are one standard, and then something like the CPC, for example, where we're just getting off the ground, is so damn complicated right now, given everything that's going on. This is not light lifting, it's heavy lifting. So I've had several people reach out to me about the CPC, for example. They have never attended a meeting. They have not read the minutes. They have really no clue as what's going on. And you know my style, I'm pretty tough. Get informed. And I think that's, most people will not speak as candidly as I do. But if you're really interested in something, do your damn homework. It's a job. This is not a light volunteer, gig. It's work for bettering your community. And I can't emphasize this enough. So I think some of the people speaking are very, very nice, but this is hard work in Watertown. And I think people have to understand it's a very serious responsibility, because you are working for the betterment of this community. And I cannot reinforce that enough. Thank you, Steve.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that goes back to, one of the things I said on one of the slides in the sense of what we're looking for. And it's, having an expertise or an interest is one thing, but really wanting to serve your community and really contribute, I think, is the most important one. And that does go back to some of what Lodi was talking about, that, if you just want to show up once a month to, chat with a few of your neighbors, yeah, that's not going to help a lot. Well, you really need to be somebody who wants to, contribute and make a difference. Other questions? Oh, Nicole, you want to add something? You're muted.
Sorry about that. You'd think I'd be used to that by now. I just had a quick question for you. I've met a lot of people who do want to put some skin in the game, who do care a lot about Watertown and its future and want to contribute, but many of them don't have specific technical backgrounds. They're not doctors, they're not engineers, they're not lawyers, they're not architects. Where are there particular boards or commissions or committees, more likely, I suppose, that you could recommend for them to be looking at and thinking about as a way to contribute?
I know this probably isn't a very satisfying answer, but I think then it really goes to what you're interested in. I don't think probably somebody who just wants to, contribute to the community, but has no interest in the environment is going to be a good Conservation Commission member. I think you at least have to find something that you either have some professional experience at, or you really have a passion about, something you really care about and interest in. And if you do have that, then I think that, really makes sense. So looking through the list of boards and commissions, then it comes down to, are there ones there that you deal with an issue that you really have an interest in? And I guess I would add to that, sometimes just the title of a committee or a commission doesn't really explain fully what it's about. And so if you do have an interest or thought, gosh, I'd kind of like the solid waste committee, but I'm really not sure what that's about, feel free to give a call to town staff city staff, and we'll be happy to, elaborate on that and provide some explanation. And before you, Leo, Amy had her hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to also respond to that question, and generally about sort of what type of experience you need, and from the perspective of the Bike Ped Committee, I think that's one where you really, you don't necessarily need a lot of technical expertise. That's, some people on the committee do, but we also have a lot of people who, just, walk and bike in their daily lives and kind of know what it's like to get around town in different ways. And that's really valuable. And I think one of the things that would be great to kind of expand on our committee is different perspectives, whether that's, people who have disabilities and, have a different way of getting around town and different needs, or, younger people, older people, sort of having more diversity and perspective. I feel like that's just as important as, having more of the background and technical skills. And I know it varies a lot by you know, what the committee actually does and if there's the regulatory focus. But yeah, I would just encourage people to, you know, not feel like you need to have like a education or background in a particular issue to get involved.
Sure. Thank you. Alodia?
One more thing, Steve, I just want to say, you know, all of us, many of us, almost every committee in town is at Fair on the Square in September, and we are all willing to talk with anybody who comes by our booth, so to speak. I will also say that the people that volunteer for these various committees in town really care about this community. Most of us all have our phone numbers out in public, our emails are out there. Call people, ask questions. You know, the only way you can learn something is by feeling your way around to get different perspectives, even from people on a particular committee. So it's honest to God, it's really like doing your homework for a job, you know, because you got to love it, you got to work hard, and you have to kind of get informed. And, you know the committees that I have been involved with or I track. And when I pick up the phone and call somebody and ask a question about a particular issue, I've never been turned down. And so this is not a gadfly opportunity or let me just get my face out there opportunity. As I said before, it's hard work and you need to have a sense of commitment. And if you don't know what skill set you're bringing to something, but you have an interest, believe me, the people that you could be talking to could really fish that out of you and say, well, might be something that you could add to this committee. But it's critically important. And I've said again and again, anybody can pick up the phone and call most of the people in this town and get some really solid answers and very good responses.
Thank you. Libby? You have to unmute. Oh,
Sorry about that. In this latter part, it's been very useful information for people who might be interested that you're encouraging people who have a deep interest in it and a will to serve and to be serious about serving. But there is one question that I haven't heard answered yet. Are there any vacancies or upcoming vacancies on any of these committees where you are looking for a specific skill set, one particular skill set? I mean, that would be helpful. We can pass that information around to people we might know.
sure. And I didn't do that purposely because that varies so much by committee. And you know, if I was going to do that for 15 or so committees, that would have taken a long time. You know, for example, the Board of Health, you need to be a doctor. You know, certainly don't need to be a doctor for the Zoning Board of Appeals, but you need some experience, you know, that might relate to planning and zoning. So I think there really is a variety. And, you know, if someone had an interest in a particular board or committee, again, feel free to reach out and be happy to provide some more feedback on that. Go ahead, Libby.
Well, I guess my question is, I understand that specific committees, you'd be looking for people with specific credentials or specific general skill sets, but I'm just wondering if any of these committees have any of the people representing any of these committees here tonight are looking for any one particular set of skills or background to round out the committee.
Okay, sure. Janet?
Sorry. Okay, for the Stormwater Committee, we are looking for people there's two different areas that are important right now. One is that we're kind of weak on is people who are good at looking at grant opportunities, seeing where money is available and how it could be used by the committee, by the town. And the other is somebody with connections with the school system, that once COVID calms down, we can start reconnecting with the schools and integrating with their curriculum.
We are running past the advertised time. Amy or Jean or Leo, did you have any particular skills you thought you were particularly looking for?
Steve, if I could put my hand up, I'd do it. I just can't
That's
find
right.
a place on this
You go right
computer. So with regard to skill set, obviously would like a botanist or a biologist when Patrick finally leaves us, but it's hard to replace that. But with regard to backgrounds, I think the interest would be interested in how you can protect our environment, our wetlands and our streams. We have had citizen activists on our board for many, many years. And I mentioned Mary Louise McDermott, a past chair, was certainly didn't have a background in science, didn't have a background in engineering, but she was on the board for a long time. And prior to that, we had Susan Falkoff, again, not a background in science or engineering, but activist who really wanted to protect our wetlands. And so we have these people in town that are interested in helping us. And certainly, if they have a strong interest, they should apply. But it's great to have technical people. Like I said, we had a very strong board and had for a long time. So I think citizen activists are always good to have.
Good point. All right. Seeing no other hands and seeing how we're past 7:30, I certainly appreciate everyone coming to the meeting tonight. Very happy with the turnout. It was great to see so many people interested in boards and commissions. Hopefully we'll get some good applications into the manager's office and get some people appointed. Fill
Hey,
some of
Steve, one
these
more thing.
vacancies.
I forgot, Nancy's there. Nancy was a board member at one time too.
Yes, she was.
Thank you for organizing this, Nicole
Thank you,
and
Steve.
Steve.
Sure. Yeah, Nicole, it was certainly the impetus to get this put together, and appreciate your interest and help in doing that. And again, I think we'll try and do this again, maybe annually. I think it'd be really helpful. And we do have most of the counselors with us tonight, which is also impressive that, they're taking interest in this conversation and what everybody had to say, and appreciate everyone for coming. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thank
And
you,
I want to
everyone.
thank all,
Thank you,
I
Nicole.
want to thank all the
Thank
board
you.
members.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.